Thank you, Mr. Tate. Give a few more seconds here till my clock hits 7. Ooh, that didn't work. That's better. Trying to be all polite. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regular council meeting of Thursday, May 21st. And glad you could all join us today. The mayor is away today on leave, and I would like to acknowledge that we're running this meeting on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin people who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. We'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any edits? I haven't heard of any from staff. Not seeing anyone from council, so I get a motion. Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Southcott. Any debate? Seeing none. All in favor? That is unanimous. And then we'll start with our public input period, which is any matters that are up for discussion or that members of the public wish to contribute. Things related to legislative matters, committee recommendations, or new business on the agenda. This is not an opportunity for questions, but just an opportunity to provide comment before council. Is anyone from the gallery wish to make a comment on today's agenda? Anyone online, Mr. Tate? Okay, last call from the gallery. Seeing none, we will move on to 8.1, which is a proclamation. And I feel a little touched today to have the opportunity to do this proclamation for ALS. Those that may not know, my mother-in-law passed from ALS about 4 years ago, and one of the big reasons why my family came to Powell River was because of her illness back in 2020. So it's a little touching to be able to share this today. So whereas amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, otherwise known as ALS, is a progressive motor neuron disease, and whereas at any given time there are people living with ALS in British Columbia, and whereas ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, can afflict anyone, and whereas advancing ALS research is very important, and whereas the ALS Society of BC is dedicated to providing support to ALS patients along with their families and caregivers to ensure the best quality of life possible for those living with ALS. Now, therefore, I, Earl Almeida, acting mayor of the city of Powell River, do hereby proclaim June 2026 as ALS Awareness Month in the city of Powell River. And hopefully, you can join us on June 20th at Willingdon Beach, where there'll be a walk to support ALS. Moving into our consent agenda, the corporate officer has asked that we remove 9.3, the bylaw enforcement policy, out of the consent agenda. And so that will be discussed afterwards. And so is there anything else that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Elliott.
I'll move the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. And we'll move to now 10.1, which is the bylaw enforcement policy that we just removed. So corporate officer.
Thank you. The reason I asked that this be pulled from the consent agenda was I had asked for a few amendments, minor in nature, with respect to a couple of the wordings. So I've handed out the amended version. Unfortunately, the amended version did not make it into the agenda. I apologize for that. But so section 7, we were changing the word shall to should. And section 11 sub C just required a comma. And then I added Civil Resolution Tribunal Act and Regulation as one of the related enactments, policies, and procedures in respect of this policy. And so the request then becomes that council approve the bylaw enforcement policy as amended. But certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Any questions for the corporate officer? Mr. Isaacson.
Not a question, but I was actually going to ask to remove them from the consent agenda because my understanding is that things go on the consent agenda when they were passed unanimously at committee of the whole, and this one wasn't. But my memory of our bylaw, a procedure bylaw, may be wrong on that one.
It's not in the procedure bylaw, but that was something that we had talked about, and I apologize because yes, I missed that point, so it shouldn't have been on the consent agenda in any event. So my apologies for that.
Okay. So we need a motion to accept as amended. Councillor Elliott. Second by Councillor Southcott. Any further discussion? Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I appreciate the need for an updated or an updated version of to support bylaw enforcement. My reason for voting against it earlier and my reason for voting against it tonight will remain. I would love to spend more time seeing what the options are to incorporate restorative justice, knowing that many of the bylaw enforcement issues that arise as a case of complaints are actually relationship issues between neighbors and not really about the complaint itself. And so I was hoping we could explore a bit more of a broader path as some other communities have done. All that being said, though, the work otherwise, as it is good. I just feel it's missing a component, or at least us understanding what that component could look like. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I think Councillor Isaacson's point is well taken. And moving forward is an improvement over what we have now. And continuous improvement is something we should always strive for, and we can continue to do, and I'm going to vote in favor.
Seeing anyone else, I will call the motion question. All in favor? And opposed? Opposed by Councillor Isaacson. The motion passes. Moving into legislative matters, 11.1, the 2026-2030 financial plan amendment for amenity cost charge and development cost charge special project.
Evening, Acting Mayor and Council. No comments in addition to what's in the report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
It's an easy. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you for the report. It's pretty understandable. The one thing that surprises me is how much it'll cost to do this work. And I'm aware that costs for all this kind of work is increasing. You know, I've seen it increase way more than it even used to in the past few years. In the case of this, there is there's cost recovery, and I'm wondering if there was any thought given or there's any curiosity about how long it might take to actually recover the costs of creating this new bylaw. I know it's not, we don't look to do cost recovery on a bylaw like this exactly. The purpose of it is to channel funds in another direction, but I'm just wondering, because there's so much concern these days about cost of the work that we're doing.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, yes, it is different pots of money. I mean, the DCC and ACC rates, as we collect them, would not be sort of put back to cover the cost of this study. And really, the collection depends on the rate of growth and development in the community, which is, of course, difficult to predict.
On the basis of, you know, recent averages, and we haven't had massive changes over the past few years. It's been fairly steady and actually fairly healthy, I think. Maybe not in the past year. But can you guess at how long it might take to be equivalent with DCCs and ACCs to the amount that it's going to cost to do this. And I absolutely agree that this needs to be done because it generates revenue. The whole purpose is highly justifiable.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair, I wouldn't want to hazard a guess because I really couldn't fathom a guess. I think
it's a
staff
random
could probably
sample
look to get
besides.
back to you with, maybe what has been collected in the last few years with respect to DCCs, but I wouldn't have that answer today.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My question is that, so I recall just in the previous term that we had done an update to our ACC-DCC bylaw, and I was wondering what was done at that point for a study, and if it was more a matter of updating and why we're doing the full scope rather than an update.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I understand the last DCC bylaw was majorly overhauled in 2019. Recommendation from the province is to do a significant update and overhaul every 5 years. And a big part of that reason is because your DCC rates reflect the projects that you are attempting to fund through the collection of those DCCs. And those projects may be fully funded, they may come off the list, new projects will be added to the list. So it's a good practice and guidance from the province to do a significant overhaul of your DCC bylaw every 5 years. And presently the city doesn't have an ACC bylaw. It's a relatively new tool from the province, so we've yet to enact one.
Thank you.
Councillor Dope, followed by Councillor Isaacson.
I've got a couple of concerns about it. First one, I don't think we can do anything about it, but I've got to mention it. That we've got another case of budgeting $100,000 to spending when we're getting our financial plan in order. And then when we get around to doing it, it's $80,000 more, which is 80% in addition to what the original budget was. And this is not the only project that's happening to. We look at the theater seating when we're getting down further. We've got another place where we budgeted and we don't have enough money to do the project when we finally get the bids in, so we have to add on to it. But I think at some point we need to find a reason why the budgeting for all these things is so much off. It's off 80% or 100%. I think maybe we need to change our practices for budgeting. I think we've got a long line of capital projects that have been put off for a number of years, and I'm suspecting that most of those don't have enough money budgeted to actually do the programs anymore. That's a concern I want to talk about. I still think we have to do something about the amenity cost charges and the development cost charges. But I was concerned. I'm probably more concerned about the choice to take the $30,000 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve Fund, which is money we just recently put into the reserve in order to smooth the taxes in 2026 and 2027 to reflect the decrease in tax collections from the mill. We've got a number of reserve funds, so I'm wondering why it was decided to take the $30,000 from the stabilization fund as opposed to another reserve fund, because that's going to impact taxes right away in 2027.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, working with the previous acting director of finance, that was the recommendation, is identified as being the most appropriate source for those monies. But I might, if our newly minted director of finance wants to comment.
Through the acting mayor. So from my understanding, there's two reserves. There's a property tax stabilization fund, and then there's this new financial stabilization fund. It was the property tax stabilization fund that was used for 26 and will be used for 2027. This financial stabilization fund is designed for these new projects that come up, and so they don't impact tax requisition.
I'll worry about it a little less.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering, it looks like you're recommending a budget that's at the lower end of the scope of similar projects. And I'm wondering if there's anything additional that could be done about the scope of the project through copying and pasting and borrowing the work of other similar studies that have happened to benefit from other communities even more than maybe what we already are planning to do.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the acting mayor, I think certainly that's part of the reason why we've landed on the suggested 180,000 here. I agree, the city will benefit from the fact that this work is taking place across the province in numerous municipalities, and there are some, highly skilled consultants out there, a handful of which have been doing the bulk of this work, and so I think we will certainly benefit from that work having been done, and that I think was part of the reason why we landed on this amount.
Mr. CAO.
Just wanted to answer the earlier question from Councillor Southcott in regards to the amount of money that we receive from development cost charges in 2025. And again, this was in a note to the consolidated financial statements that was at the last meeting. It's approximately $180,000 came in development cost charges in 2025. So the reality of these, planting a seed by moving these, and things should grow. That's the plan.
Not seeing any other questions from council. Can I get someone to make our motion? Councillor Isaacson.
I move that the 2026 budget for the amenity cost charge ACC development cost charge DCC special project be increased by 80,000 from 100,000 to 180,000, with $50,000 of funding coming from existing DCC reserve funds and $30,000 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve Fund, and that the 2026 to 2030 financial plan bylaw be amended accordingly.
By Councillor Southcott. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll speak to it briefly. I mean, obviously, this is the start to kicking this off, making sure that we have enough budget to put out an RFP. As Councillor Doubt confirmed through staff, the Financial Stabilization Reserve Fund it was amalgamation, I think, of 4 reserve funds, including like the Special Projects Fund and maybe the election. There's a couple of little reserve funds that were put into one, and this type of project is what it's ideally suited to be funded by. But stepping back further from that, this project generally, we have relied very heavily on voluntary contributions. And one thing that I hear very clearly from sessions at AVICC and UBCM as it relates to developers and development charges is having clarity and certainty before a project is prepared, so that they can understand how the money is going to shake out and whether a project is viable. So developing a program around ACCs and DCCs that will provide developers certainty moving into a project rather than having to negotiate voluntary contributions will be helpful for our community to be a clearer community to build in. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I concur with Councillor Isaacson around creating standard across the board charges that would apply to everybody rather than trying to negotiate separately, because that's problematic, because it appears that we aren't treating every single project the same then, and I don't think that was the best way to do that. And so that's going to be a relief. It's a little bit perturbing to me to find out that what is a study which is largely a desktop exercise with inputs that come out with a report for standard cities, and depending on what your assets are and so forth, is so high in cost. And so I trust staff that they tell me that's what it cost. It seems to me that we must have folks developing these computer analysis programs, or however they come up with these things, must be proprietary, and they're being charged a lot. And so I'm hoping that there gets to be more competition in that area in the future. Being local governments are the ones that are the only ones that use it, I guess that's probably not likely. But that I'm going to vote in favor. I'm just, upset on my own and city's behalf that what largely is a math exercise is costing so much money. Thanks.
No other hands? I will call the question. All in favor? I don't see anyone opposed. That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Moving to 11.2, the 2026 grants and aid. Call up our manager of partnerships, intergovernmental and public relations.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to summarize the 2026 grant and aid applications and to present a recommendation for allocating the approved budget of $25,000. As you know, the grant and aid program provides financial support to local nonprofit organizations that contribute to the economic and civic health of the community through their programs, services, and events. The program is guided by Council Policy 261, Community Partnerships, Investment through Grants and Permissive Tax Exemptions. And as I mentioned, funding for the program, $25,000 was approved as part of the 2026-2030 financial plan. Within the report, Council will find a description of the 8 applications received. All applications were reviewed and evaluated in accordance with the criteria outlined in Council Policy 261. The results of that evaluation are included as Appendix A. And as noted in the report, best practice for funders awarding grants to not-for-profit and charitable organizations is to fully fund requests if possible. And also included for the Council's information as Appendix C is an historical grant and aid funding summaries for the years 2017 to 2025. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the report and recommendation before Council.
Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I first want to start out by saying that I'm really appreciative of the table that you've created. It's really, really great to have a table that puts out the criteria we are judging and makes an assessment like this. And so I just wanted to thank staff for that. That's very much appreciated. I really like it. I think that the recommendations make sense. I'm probably going to be totally in favor of those recommendations. The recommendation that came forward was, I guess the ones that got screened out were mainly on the evidence of financial need criteria. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, actually, it's not a question. I want to express appreciation. I think we benefit from your professional background working in the community foundation sector and understanding the nonprofit sector deeply. And so I wanted to just express appreciation for the table and work. Obviously, you're working within the lens of an existing policy, and maybe you would have ideals of how that might look different in the future. But I wanted to express appreciation of interpreting the policy and making recommendations that fit within our budget. So appreciation. Should have shared that later instead of the question period. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Doe.
I don't see a lot of hands up, but I'd like to make the motion. So I would move that council approve the following 2026 grants in aid and direct staff to distribute the funds accordingly. Everybody Deserves a Smile cassette for $1,500. Powell River United Church, $3,000. Townsite Heritage Society, $2,000. Powell River Brain Injury Society, $3,000. Four Tides Hospice Society, $10,000. And Powell River Therapeutic Riding Association, $5,500. And if there's a seconder, I'd speak to it.
Councilor Elliott pre-seconded you, so you're good to go.
And I want to thank staff too for a well-written report. You know, council has made larger grants in aid in previous times, but recently we've been trying to limit it as much as we can to $25,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's difficult to do that because I think when we look at the applications, everybody would probably around this table like to be able to approve all of them. It's a question of how much taxpayers' money are we going to have to spend that. But I think these are good choices and they will benefit the community, so I'm in support of it.
Seeing any further hands, I will ditto all the comments of my other councilors and I'll call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. We'll move into 11.3. Ms. Octoloni stays here.
Yes. Hello again. The purpose of this report is to present the Spring 2026 City Project and Community Not-for-Profit Grant recommendations from the Powell River Community Forest for Council. Powell River Community Forest is a fully owned subsidiary of the City of Powell River. The PRCF Board of Directors review the PRCF community grant applications and recommend grants to be awarded for council consideration, typically in both spring and fall. The PRCF Board also provide input on projects submitted by the city that utilize the Community Forest Reserve Fund. An annual budget of $1.2 million for community grants is included within the approved 2026-2030 financial plan, which is $600,000 for spring and $600,000 for fall. I would first like to address the city project that was included within the report. The City of Powell River Project number 429, Recreation Complex Extended Theater Seating in the amount of $500,000, was favorably reviewed by the Powell River Community Forest Board in fall of 2025 and included within the 2026-2030 financial plan as a capital project. It has become apparent through the recent RFP process that the initial project budget is not adequate to carry out the work. The PRCF Board favorably reviewed the request for additional funding in the amount of $162,466.50 from the Community Forest Reserve Fund as part of its Spring 2026 grant review process and recommended to Council that the additional funds be approved. The motions requesting the necessary budget increase and the amendment to the financial plan, along with the approval of the contract award, are contained in a separate report, actually item 11.4. Now moving forward into the community, the not-for-profit projects. As reported at the April 2nd, 2026 council meeting, the Powell River Community Forest Working Group met in March and agreed to a timeline for the Spring 2026 grants, as well as a process to ensure that future Community Forest Reserve Fund grants align with Council Policy 261. 17 applications were received in advance of the April 7th deadline. 2 were withdrawn by the applicant, and a project from the fall 2025 application intake that was not funded was added for reconsideration. A summary of the 16 project applications was included within the report for your information. As part of the initial eligibility review undertaken by city staff in accordance with Council Policy 261 and included as Appendix D, 3 projects were deemed ineligible for funding, 2 due to the operational nature of their projects, while the 3rd was a recent startup with no financial history and no other funding secured at the time. In accordance with Council Policy 261, the Powell River Community Forest Board of Directors reviewed the 13 remaining projects and provided its recommendation to Council. The PRCF Board, as part of their review and due diligence process, connected with the applicants to gather further information and discuss the projects in greater detail. And I wish to express my appreciation to the PRCF Board for their careful stewardship of the grant review process. The recommendations before Council align with the process established by the working group, the requirements of Council Policy 261, and with best practice for funders awarding grants to not-for-profit and charitable organizations, and that the recommendation before Council is to fund the full amount of the request for the 12 recommended projects. I wanted to address the 13th project that the Powell River Community Forest Board reviewed and did not recommend. The Kiwanis Village Safety Project was not recommended by the PRCF Board due to the fact that Kiwanis received a separate grant in fall of 2025 for a project which is still underway. The PRCF Board indicated that they will reconsider this project again in fall of 2026, anticipating that the current project will be complete. The 12 projects total $304,836.68, which falls within the approved budget. And also included for Council's information as Appendix E is an historical grant funding summary by organization since inception in 2010. Astounding that it's been $13.8 million has been distributed to community and not-for-profit organizations within the community. So I'm very happy to answer any questions regarding the report and recommendation before council.
Mr. Elliott.
I don't have a question. I just want to say this process that we've done for this particular intake has improved greatly. And I want to thank everybody involved in all of the work that has landed us here. And thank you so much.
Mr. Prom.
So, Chair, I just want to second those comments. Having been involved on the working committee that has presided over the intake in the past, this has been a pleasure to see before us. The work has been thoroughly vetted, and congratulations to staff and the PRFC board.
Yeah, thank you.
And just for clarification, I think the 13 million was just for the nonprofits. I think the city has received another
16.2. So a total of $30 million since 2010 has funded community and city projects.
Thank you. Mr. Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to staff, I'm wondering, one of the common refrains about the value of the community forest is that it creates the ability to leverage funds and from other sources. And that actually seems like a pretty weak category this year. And I'm wondering whether that evaluation criteria, given you mentioned trust-based philanthropy in the previous report, whether that is a good practice to evaluate based on that criteria, and if it is a good evaluation criteria, maybe what might we be doing to support or encourage more leveraging to take place, or if you notice any trends as to maybe why that was a weak category kind of across the board this year.
Yeah, that was noted through the chair. That was absolutely noted during our review, is that there wasn't a lot of organizations that were able to leverage additional funding. And I think it actually speaks to the situation, that the financial situation all of these organizations are currently facing. There aren't as many grants available as there were previously. And so I think people are in a bit more of a difficult situation. In terms of whether it's something that should continue to be included within the policy, I think it should. I think it really adds a lot of value when you're able to ladder grant upon grant, adds value to the community much quicker. So I think it's something to keep within the policy, but also realize that we're in a challenging, difficult time, financial time.
Quick follow-up point. I would imagine also in some cases, this might be the kickstart funding that makes the possibility of leverage from others in the future. And were we to look at these applications 3 years from now, we may be able to look back and they were able to secure other funding perhaps as a result, but not before their application.
Yeah, potentially.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you. I just have words of appreciation as well. Specifically, I read through the whole works here, including the application files, and I was comforted to see, I think there were 5 applications for food-related grants for food-related projects. And over many years, there's been concerns in this community for food security, all the way from just local production and economy to the emergency preparedness element of it, and the fact that we're an isolated community, and the recognition that less than 5% of food consumed here gets produced here. So I was really comforted to see that increase in applications relating to food, but also 3 of them noted in the recipients as well. So I'm sure it's not just going to be me that is made happy by that. And I just really love to see the balance. I absolutely acknowledge the huge benefits that the not-for-profits realize for this whole community. And that's one of the most special things about this entire community, is how everybody works together and provides. There's just so much giving. So it's just so good to be able to contribute. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
If we're ready, I could make the motion.
Please.
I move that council accept the recommendations of the Powell River Community Forest Board of Directors and approve the following community nonprofit grants from the Community Forest Reserve Fund and direct staff to distribute the funds accordingly. 437, Tuxedo Art, Culture and Tourism Society, $937. Application 438, Powell River Farmers Agriculture Institute, $46,374. Application 439, Powell River Educational Services Society, $25,007. Application 440, Life Cycle Housing Society, $35,000. Application 441, Top Out Climbing Co-op, $53,491.68. Application 442, Cathette Climbers Access and Development Association, $10,000. Application 446, Royal Canadian Legion Branch 164, $20,000. Application 447, Powell River Track and Field Club, $49,319. Application 448, Skookum Food Provisioners Co-op, $3,200. Application 449, Powell River Rod and Gun Club, $9,200. Application 450, Prisma, $31,273. Application 451, BC Conservation Foundation, $21,035.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Any vote, Councillor Elliott?
Very pleased to say that I'm voting in favor. I think the process was commendable for all parties involved. Happy that we are able to contribute to these community projects. And if anybody's looking for what the projects actually are, they're written in the information in the report online and in the appendices. And so thank you.
Yeah, actually, one question for staff. What was I going to say? Oh, in some of one of the criteria is the broad community benefit, and that was true for both reports that you're sharing tonight. And I feel like there's a distinction between and a benefit to both projects that have a broad community benefit and that projects that maybe have a focused community benefit for a group that is particularly struggling or is marginalized in some way. It could be seniors or youth or people struggling with certain health issues. And I'm wondering, as you were evaluating those, whether you have thoughts looking towards the future about how we might acknowledge that distinction, or what makes most sense for the granting programs in that sense.
Yeah, through the chair, through the acting mayor. Thanks very much for the question. It's been my experience that sometimes these smallest projects have the greatest benefit, and they may impact two or a handful of people, but they have that benefit is life-changing, and in turn community changing. So I think I understand what you're trying to say. Yes, when I was looking and reviewing the applications, and I believe the Powell River Community Forest Board were reviewing the applications. They look at both of that, the broad benefit, but also the benefit to those more vulnerable populations that we're looking to serve through this grant. And it may be a smaller number, but it's just as important and potentially more important in terms of their lives and the way and how they live. So.
Thank you. In particular, I'm looking at a couple that were not deemed to have broad community benefit, but that are specifically for seniors tenants, right? And that would be an example of important but not broad community benefit. And is this the right criteria? Because we still deem those projects as worthy. Yeah. Anyways, just an observation and a question that I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing anyone else, so call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Councillor Palm.
Just a follow-up question, if I may, through the chair, and that is, now that we have passed the motion to award these funds to various organizations, we've deviated from some of the practices in the past. Will the organizations be sending reps to the council chamber to receive recognition along with community forest members being present at some point in the near future?
Yes, you can actually expect the recipients as well as the Powell River Community Forest Board to be here at next council on the June the 4th to receive the recognition. And at that time, the Powell River Community Forest Board will also be presenting its dividend check to the city. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to 11.4, the budget amendment and recommendation for contract award, extended theater seating replacement project. Mr. Cronin.
Good evening, Council and Acting Mayor. Purpose of my report this evening is to request the necessary budget increase for the extended theater seating replacement project, as well as provide results on the request for proposals and request approval to award the contract to Centaur Products. In developing the budget for this project, our chief building engineer, through conferences, conversations with known suppliers, determined that a budget of approximately $500,000 was believed to be sufficient for this project, based on some, albeit higher level conversations about the existing conditions of the theater. So the understanding is that in a bit more of a, I'll say maybe generic scenario, the budget would have been sufficient in order to meet the existing conditions of our beloved Evergreen Theater. We unfortunately are seeing a bit of an increased cost for a very customized system that suits the space and provides essentially the exact replicate of what we have in there currently, although the intention is to go with a powered system. So staff on site, while they will still have to remove those chairs physically from the system, they should be able to hit a button on the wall and watch that system come out, rather than, throw their backs into it and pull it out physically themselves. So that's additional estimated cost of around $20,000 for the powered system. So it really is largely attributed, I believe, to the very specific footprint that we have available in there. You'll see in the report that we did receive quite a significant variance in the pricing that we received. The lower bid from Toletti Distribution, which is, I believe, around $335,000 all in. That did include a seating system and chairs. However, the capacity of the seating was less than half of what we were looking for. And there was going to be call it an island of space of almost 20 feet between the front of that system and where the fixed seating in the Evergreen Theater sits. Obviously not a desirable solution for that theater. And so the decision was made after trying to get Toletti to provide a bit more of a customized product that suits the space. They were unable to do it in a more cost-effective manner than the secondary price that we received from Centaur Products. Original submission at $589,000. We did attempt to explore some cost-saving options with Centaur, including reduction in maybe quality of chairs, manual system, those sorts of things, deferring purchases of the freestanding seating to a further year to kind of soften the blow on this increase. However, just due to existing conditions, poor condition of the chairs, not really being repairable in their current state, the reduction in chair quality and comfort really not being worthwhile for the measly cost reduction that we saw. We do believe that we've garnered the best possible price for the product that we need.
Very much. Any questions from council? Mr. Southcott.
Yeah, thank you very much for all your hard work on this. I've been aware for many years that this needed to be replaced and expecting it to actually be condemned, that whole system. I don't think it ever really got to that point. I'm not sure, but.
For council's knowledge, just due to the time change, the contractor's inability to meet the scheduling window that we had set up for the summertime, and we're now looking into first quarter of next year. We do intend to take a look at the system just to make sure that we are allowing safe use of that system.
Just curious as to how old it is. Was that original with the theater?
It is.
So it's 50 years old. That's long service. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Elliott.
It says the original budget was 500 and yet you want to increase by 162, 466.50, which looks to me like it would be a budget of 662. I'm just curious about whether I'm misreading something here or.
Yeah, I could refer you to the, apologize, fourth page of the report where I provided a bit more information on some additional costs that are factored into that total budget request. For the powered system, there is a high-end cost of about $10,000 to get the proper power brought over to that area. There is still the flooring replacement that we're intending to package with this project for some anticipated cost savings. It will be cheapest to do the floor while that system is out, and as well as a bit of a contingency to account for any unknowns, existing conditions that we need to address as we proceed in this project.
Okay, so that additional is the power, flooring, and contingency. Okay,
Does include all three of those. Yes, correct.
thank you.
Mr. Brown.
I just want to clarify in my mind the dollars and where they're going, as well as the public may have lost some concept here. And that is the $580,000 plus GST is going towards the retractable seating arrangement, correct?
Correct.
And then there's another 60,000 from our community forest board going to replace flooring.
Correct.
So we just have to say that way back when we had portfolios and we were dealing with Rector Bogarts at the complex way back when, this has been on the agenda for replacement for years and years and years. And I am very happy to see that this is finally going to be done. Take the burden off staff trying to move those cumbersome seats back and forth. This is a giant step forward for our complex. And where would we be? I have to say, where would we be without our community forest board taking care of this community and our complex? Just great job. Thank you very much.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the bleachers have not been able to be moved for about the last year or so, which has made the Arbutus room almost unusable, I guess, to its full capacity, correct? So,
The chair, I believe it's been about three years.
so now it'll also increase the usage in the complex for that space. Councilor Isaacs?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to staff, maybe I missed this. Does this contract also include any changes to the chairs down below? This is just for them. Yeah, I think.
Through the chair,
Ready.
only for the retractable seating, the fixed seating will not be touched in this project.
Seating's pretty cushy. The upstairs stuff is, yeah, fold down. Okay, thank you.
Nope.
This is kind of off topic, and I'm sorry about that, but I can't go home tonight without bringing it up. The Evergreen Theater is a great place, and it's a wonderful asset to the community, and the community forest is chipping in and making it better. But it does have one flaw, a significant flaw for me, and probably not the only one, but I think I and other people notice it. There is precious little seating or comfortable seating for people who have limited mobility, people who require walkers or wheelchairs to get into the events. And there's room for maybe 4 or 5 people with a walker or a wheelchair to get in and see on that one level. I think that's a problem, and it excludes a lot of people from the place. I don't think that could be changed with the adjustable seating that's being replaced now, but I think it needs to be on the list of important things to do to the Evergreen to make it accessible to everybody.
Yeah, a related question. The current seating, the first row of seats in the upper section is raised, like you can't sit down from floor level. Do you know, are you at the point in the design where you would know whether those seats, for example, can be seated or are at ground level, or would they be raised like they currently are?
Through the chair, at this time, the intent is to match the existing system as close as we possibly can. Part of the reason for this is to essentially grandfather ourselves in on a building permit requirement, which will also reduce architectural fees associated with the project, reducing costs. Discussions potentially could be had to make some adjustments, but there could be some implications to our building permit that has not been captured in the budget request.
It's probably been discussed at a previous meeting, but I remember a year or two ago, the theater roof was a matter of concern. Did we get that concern fixed?
The pool roof.
It's also a concern.
Acting Mayor, it hasn't currently been fixed. It's on the, it is on the docket for future capital investment. The theater seating for just for mayor and acting mayor and councils to know the theater seating for accessibility is within the current complex rehabilitation plan. We haven't got to that element yet. Preliminary conversations that I've had with staff on that would be that it could be focused more on the lower bowl. So that with that, we're kind of continuing on with that idea and plan.
Councilor Baum.
Just a comment, Councilor Dutt, that's a good point to bring up for mobility challenged individuals. Wheelchairs do have access to the theater. There is that platform with the raised seating for the upper level that looks over top of anybody that may be in a wheelchair, or because I know from hosting events at the Brooks Theater where the wheelchair stations are when you come in the doors that are on the same level. So we have that same concept in our theater that can accommodate those that are in wheelchairs and whatnot. Thank you.
You read the motion? Councilor Elliott.
I move that council direct staff to, I just gotta make sure I'm on the right one here. Yeah. Direct staff to amend City of Powell River 2026-2030 financial plan bylaw 2794-2026 for the extended theater seating replacement project to increase the project budget in the amount of $162,466.50, with the increase funding by the Powell River Community Forest Reserve Fund, and that council award contract number 2320-20-2365 extended theater seating replacement RFP number 1220-20-0586 to Centaur Products Incorporated in the amount of $580,466.50 plus GST.
Southcott. Charlie, any further comments? Good.
It's really nice to see some of these projects moving forward. We've had some staff capacity issues, and because of really good work by our CAO and folks who work with him to get hiring done, and all of our new staff that have come on board in the last year or two, that we are finally seeing projects move forward, and it's pretty exciting. So thank you.
Mr. Palm.
So that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Cronin. An 11.5 zoning amendment of city-owned Barnett Street properties, ZA 123. Director Gao.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council. So the purpose of the report before you is to present a bylaw that proposes amendments to the city zoning bylaw as it relates to city-owned land on Barnett Street. 5 weeks ago, staff presented an initial report related to the proposal that included a draft amendment bylaw. Council directed staff to issue notice that first reading of Amendment Bylaw 2816 would be considered at a future meeting of council. As explained previously, the proposed rezoning and subdivision of 2 city-owned properties is intended to pre-zone newly created lots as a proactive measure to support and encourage future high-density multi-unit residential development in a strategic location that is within walking distance to significant commercial and transit services. Current zoning of both properties is split zoning with institutional zoning on the northern portions of both, and the parks and playing fields zoning on the southern portions. The land zone parks is not reserved or dedicated for a specific statutory purpose, and the city can rezone it. Amendment bylaw 2816 proposes to rezone Lot B, shown in red, from institutional to multifamily residential. And rezone proposed Lot D, shown in yellow, from parks and playing fields to multifamily residential 5. As well, allow additional uses such as assembly, civic, and institutional uses on proposed lots B and D, provided that residential uses make up at least half of the total floor area of the overall development. And that's what I have to say tonight. We're looking for first through third reading of this bylaw. I'm here for any questions.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Thank you, Director. The proposed Lot B being changed from institutional to residential 3, is that that's not going to impact the current temporary housing that's there?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, no, it is not. And in fact, that was part of the rationale for including those additional uses. That's one of the ways to capture the existing use. But even if that wasn't happening, it would be a situation of legal nonconformance. So the existing use would be able to continue happening until the use ceased to happen for 6 months or more.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm going to make the motion. But
Go ahead, Councillor Isaacson.
I was going to make the motion if there are no further questions. I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100 2006 amendment bylaw 2816 2006 be given a first, second, and third reading.
Second by Councillor Elliott. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gao. Moving to 11.6, the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw 2751 2025 amendment bylaw 2820 2026. To our new CFO.
Thank you, Acting Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to working with you in the rest of your time. This report is pretty basic. It's mostly housekeeping. The finance team did a great job getting through the audit, and it's best practice at year end to amend the budget to match results and then incorporate the amendments that were approved throughout the year. If there's any questions at this time, I'll happily answer them.
Councillor Isaacson.
I'm ready to move the motion if there's no questions. I move that City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw 2751 2025 amendment bylaw 2820 2026 be given first, second, and third readings.
Second by Councillor Elliott. Any other discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. This is something we do every year about this time of year, where we take all of the amendments that have been made to budgets and so forth throughout the year and amalgam into the one process for amending the bylaw, so that we're not amending the bylaw so many times throughout the year. And so it's good timing. We don't want our new CFO to think that he's going to get away with no questions in the future. It's just that we do this one every year. Thank you.
It's a softball to get started. I will call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Cadman. Moving to 13.1 committee recommendations, the City of Powell River downtown plan that was referred from the committee of the whole meeting on May 5th.
Good evening again, Acting Mayor and Council. Nothing in addition to my previous report, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Dope.
I've got one, and I'm in favor of doing this, but I think there's a lot of questions. Since we brought this up at a previous meeting, I've been talking to all kinds of people who really want to know the details of what this plan would bring, and I'd like to hear about what we're going to do as far as community engagement to do this, because I think if we're going to succeed in making these changes, we're going to have community support. And in order to have community support, we're going to have to make sure everybody knows what these changes would be about. So I just want to express my opinion about the importance of having some community engagement. The more the better, so we can talk to people about what they want, what they're worried about, and how to get the best result. Can you give me any help there?
Yes, yeah, thank you for the question. Through the acting mayor, the local government establishes the statutory process for OCP amendments, including public engagement and public hearing requirements. It is at the discretion and the privilege of council to direct staff to, for the scope and scale of what that consultation might look like. And should council approve the recommendation this evening, I think the next step in particular to the old arena site and that OCP amendment would be to have staff prepare a report on what the engagement strategy might look like, as well as the process and timeline for that proposed amendment, and return to council for further direction.
But when would be an appropriate time to make a motion like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
When would be the appropriate time to make a motion about public engagement?
I'm not sure exactly if that you would like to see an additional amendment to what's there this evening, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Dowd, I just, to the recommendation you have before you tonight starts the process. The process includes Section 475 engagement. When we're talking about an amendment to the official community plan, staff would come back to council and ask the question, with recommendations, what does 475 engagement look like to this council? Think about benchlands or beach gardens. In those cases, there was notices sent out to property owners. My expectation is that this one will be more comprehensive. And so I don't think staff are expecting any further recommendations any further direction at this point, other than if council moves the recommendations that are before you, know that there will be an opportunity for council to weigh in on what engagement looks like, very likely in a new council term.
Thanks. That's what I'm getting at. I just want to make sure that we're not going to get ahead of ourselves and get to the point where we're making decisions after engagement would have been done. So, before it comes up later, we will be making a motion, or whoever is sitting at this table will probably make a motion about public engagement. So thanks for clarifying that.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. My question is similar to Councillor Doubt's, but a little bit different. The old arena site, it is near and dear to the entire community and most people in it. Some of the concerns I'm hearing is about just removing the covenant and believing that would not be appropriate. Can we talk about what the process would look like and when that might happen? I believe that also would come in a new term, and it would be not necessarily the same action as changing the official community plan, but rather a separate action and separate process. Could we have someone explain how that might work?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott. I mean, technically, council could remove the covenant now. Staff aren't going to make that recommendation. Staff are going to wait until further engagement takes place. So it's not going to come from staff. But that covenant sits as a covenant registered by way of a previous council. The council today could have that covenant removed at any time they wanted to. But like I say, we're not going to make that recommendation.
So the process would be up to council, is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Paul.
Mr. Chair, I just have to say that nice to see something moving forward in this regard, especially in light of the old Westview treatment plant. That's holding up a number of items that needed to be addressed down there around that area. I am very happy to see this moving forward, and I appreciate the fine work that's gone into it very much.
Ms. Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. As staff work on this next phase, I'm sure you might already guess but are aware of some of the concerns that public have. One of them being view corridor, especially from Alberni Park area, people kind of arriving down towards the beach. A second being public access to the waterfront and being able to walk back and forth, which I think is moot is not the right word, but will have to continue to exist because of the slope stability. We can't build up to the edge of that land anyways. So those are probably the two major ones. Another concern about parking. Parking is used there. You know, what does the future of parking look like in order to access the shops in the area and the beach? And the provision of a space for pretty creative public art, and not that whatever is built in the future couldn't include something like that, but it is used very well by talented artists in our community, and not that that should stop anything from going on, but making sure that artists have an outlet for experimentation would be great. And so in terms of like the physicality of the space, those are some of the things that I probably hear most often. The other question of what is actually needed in our community, whether it's condos or meeting space and hotels or whatever, I think that's an additional question that will be based on research that has already kind of started as a part of this process. But as you're working on this this next stage, I expect that you've already heard from the public a little bit over time, but I wanted to reiterate some of the concerns that I've heard that I expect will come up that will need to be addressed directly or indirectly as part of that process. Obviously, public engagement will happen, but as the fine details, as you mentioned, I think the last time you presented this report to council, the next phase is about the details. And so as you work out those details, how to consider that feedback that's been gathered as a part of this process even already would be helpful. So no questions, but I just wanted to reiterate those things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. The whole issue of the covenant kind of worries me a little bit, and it's not because of what the covenant says or the fact that a previous council applied the covenant to put it on the land title, or that the current council, which is essentially the same authority, holds the authority for the covenant. It is covenant is a very simple legal instrument, but it's generally not understood at all. And it's one of these things I've seen people, like particularly, I've had long conversations with lots of people about covenants, partly because I am closely associated with a land conservancy that uses covenants as its primary tool. And it is something that is not understood very easily, even though it's really a simple thing. So I just have to say that my sense of why this covenant was ever put on this land is to be a very strong reminder from a previous council to current council and community through however long of what the purpose of that land was. But I also observe, and I think we've all observed, and it's already been stated tonight, that there's no doubt whatsoever as to this community's sense of value for this land. We are definitely at a different juncture in history than we were as a community when this covenant was applied. And I just had to say these things because it's like the boogeyman can jump out and, out of something small like this. But my sense is that this council and city staff will manage this and treat it with as much respect as it deserves, and will handle it very responsibly. I have deep trust that that's going to happen. So the reminder that I believe that it is going to be honored and respected. And that I just had to say this because it's just one of those things that I expect to become a boogeyman, basically, that it absolutely doesn't have to be that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Someone that wants to thank you, Councillor Elliott.
I move that council receive the City of Pearl River Downtown Plan by PWL Partnership for information, and that council direct staff to prepare amendments to the Sustainable Official Community Plan and Zoning Bylaw in keeping with recommendation number 1 of the City of Pearl River Downtown Plan as it relates to the old arena site, and that council direct staff to prepare an amendment to the zoning bylaw in keeping with recommendation number 1 of the City of Pearl River Downtown Plan as it relates to the decommissioned Westview wastewater treatment plant. If I get a seconder, I'll speak.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm in favor of moving forward to do further planning. I think that if we could get a plan that was detailed enough that we could gain the comfort of our community to move forward with something like removal of a covenant to allow for a mixed use of public space, along with maybe something the public is thinking would benefit us far into the future and everybody in the community, that's kind of what we're looking for. So moving forward with this motion just allows us to do some planning and change the official community plan to allow for the things that are in the plan, which is essentially a mix of some small shops, businesses, or entrepreneurial stuff, potentially some residential mixed in, and continuing to allow for public access throughout. And so I'd like to see a plan like that and what our community can come up with. I personally would never vote for the removal of a covenant unless the community was comfortable with whatever plan we were moving forward with. And so I think this is a good first step to make.
Any other hands? I will call the question. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Howie. Moving on to 14.1, the Local Government Climate Action Program, LGCAP Letter of Support. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, I'll just speak to this briefly and then we can read the recommendation. For at least 10 years, I think longer than that, our community and communities across the province have received climate action program funding in the form of grants. We and the regional district and many other local governments have used these funds in all sorts of ways. They all have kind of a climate angle to them, and that can be the whole broad spectrum of projects that relate to climate, and more things do these days. We recently have used it, the city has used it to fund transportation-based plans, and that is also in common with many communities across British Columbia. About 4 or 5 years ago, the predecessor to the Local Government Climate Action Program, which was called the Climate Action Reserve Revenue Incentive Program, CARIP, was basically discontinued, and that was noticed, but it didn't receive much attention until some of us, in the broadest sense, noticed that that was going to happen. There was a fair bit of lobbying that went on, and then subsequently, LGCAP was announced, not necessarily as a replacement, and actually provided about 1.5 times as much funding as the CARIP program did. So, which was really good news. But it's been noticed that the budget, the next year's budget, does not contain LGCAP. There's still, I believe, it's understood there's time to lobby for that to be continued, or perhaps some other program to be instituted that does continue to provide local governments with this kind of funding. So this recommendation is similar to one that is probably we're going to see from many communities in the province. It'll go to our regional board, I think next week. And to this recommendation, I want to just add one small piece, and that is to add the request for staff to arrange a meeting with whatever appropriate minister it would be at UBCM so that we can do some more lobbying, just to keep that door open. This also will be recommended at the regional board table next week. So with that, I'll read the recommendation that council directs staff to send a letter of support to the appropriate ministries of the province and MLA Randy Neal, advocating for a continuation of LGCAP funding, and also request a meeting at the 2026 Union of BC Municipalities Convention with the appropriate ministers. I can email that to you, Deputy Officer, if you'd like.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Any further discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So is this what we sometimes call as the gas tax? Is it the same program that is funded by the gas tax?
No, this is gas tax is revenue from federal sources.
Okay.
This is a exclusively provincial fund.
Right. Okay.
It's the beginning of CAREP.
And there wasn't a provincial carbon tax that was funding it? That's been removed?
Not that I know of, but I'm not sure. Maybe staff might have some idea, but I don't believe so. I think it came out of, I think it was separate funding. The CAREP had, CAREP was connected, there were requirements. CAREP was connected to our carbon budgeting, or it's not budgeting, but we were keeping track of emissions reductions up till about 4 years ago here. And I believe that CAREP was connected to a requirement or something along those lines back then. But I don't believe LGCAP continued that requirement at all. And I don't honestly clearly remember what the requirement I'm recalling vaguely was.
Okay, so I would move to split the motion then so that we can vote and speak to each one separately.
Oh, I might just mention, if I may.
Sure.
In our email, we've received a similar
letter
from Saanich that, and I'm expecting very many others as well.
See, if someone, do I need a seconder to split the motion?
Corporate Officer, do we need to vote on splitting that motion? Okay, so apparently that is.
Okay, so I'll just speak that I'm in favor of the first half of the motion and would vote in favor of that. The second half of the motion, I would need more information or at least some confidence that we would study and have better knowledge before meeting the minister about exactly where the source of those funds were. Because right now I'm a little fuzzy about that, and I wouldn't want to be in front of the minister being fuzzy. So that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Palm.
Yes, Through Chair, I'm going to ask Councillor Southcott, because I'm not sure I know the answer to this, but these funds in the past have been used in our complex to upgrade lighting, to reduce electrical use and all that type of thing, correct?
Yep, that's true. Like quite a range of projects.
So I support a letter because over the years, certainly as of late, we seem to be receiving less and less grant funding from the provincial government because of the financial state this province seems to be in. So I am going to support this letter wholeheartedly and say we need to do what we can here locally, and this source of funding goes a long way in order to make those changes that are long overdue. Thank you.
Any other comments on the first part of the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. And then I believe the second part is automatically on the floor, Corporate Officer, regarding the letter to the request for a UBCM meeting. Is that automatically on the floor, or do we need to make the motion again? Okay, so Councillor Southcott, if you wish.
I move that council,
Screen.
oh,
On the floor.
the council directs staff to request a meeting with the appropriate ministers at the 2026 UBCM convention regarding advocating for the continuation of LG CAP funding.
By Councillor Elliott. Councillor Elliott.
So I just have one question, and I think it's of staff. Could we get background information on this, or would that be up to council to come up with that?
Through the acting mayor, staff are going to be bringing a report to council for the next council meeting, asking council specifically in regards to UBCM appointments for 2026, what they are interested in asking for meetings for. So what I can say is that even if this isn't on the table tonight, or if it was voted down, the opportunity will be coming up officially at the next council meeting anyway, as part of a report from staff. So between then and now, if any councillors wanted to research potential items to bring forward, they could do it then. And then the typical process is for staff to then create the briefing note after the fact once the topic has been identified. A quick review of the source of funding for LCAP shows that it's just actually allocated during the budget process and not associated with a specific input source funding such as gas or something or other taxes.
Great, okay. And it goes a long way for municipalities to try and meet our carbon credits obligations for 2030. Everybody's behind, but removing the funding that helps us get there is definitely not helpful. And so I would support the motion.
Councillor Doubt, followed by Councillor Southcott.
Just listening to staff, it doesn't seem that it's going to make any difference whether we pass this motion or not. If we pass it tonight, we'll be talking about it again in a couple of weeks. And if we don't pass it tonight, we'll be talking about it again in a couple of weeks. I don't see the real difference between the two. But I think if we pass this motion, it's a heads up to staff to look into the history of what we've done to with those funds. And my recollection is some of it may have been used for carbon neutrality programs of some kind, be it lighting here or there, or other small things. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but I also recollect that it might have been the funds that we used when we had a climate action committee that was appointed by the city and reported on various things that where the funding for that might have come from. So I think a little work on the history of it would make it more appropriate to have a meeting with ministers to talk about what we're asking for with some background facts behind us.
CAO.
Through Mayor, luckily I happen to have those statistics from previous questions that were asked in regards to it. And since the Climate Action Reserve from 2016 to 2025, there's been $784,794 spent by the city of those funds. And in 2026, we have $234,000 of climate action funds are budgeted to be used. So it is a fairly significant source of revenue for the city in terms of where we go. Again, in terms of where the province gets their funds to allocate in the budget, we're not sure of that, but in terms of our usage of the funds, it's been quite significant.
Thank you. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. That's kind of half of what I was going to mention. But I was also going to say that I'd be happy to just withdraw the recommendation and leave it to staff for next meeting.
I think it makes no difference one way or the other.
Okay. And then does that require a seconder?
No, I think we just call the question.
Okay. Well,
Just call the question, make it easier.
withdraw it.
We'll just call the question.
Yeah, it doesn't make it.
So seeing no other discussion, I will just call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries unanimously.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to apologize to council for not including that as a document attached to this agenda item because I did receive those stats from the interim CAO as well, or the interim CFO.
I already knew we spent a lot.
Interesting list.
Right. That takes us to item 17, public clarification. Anyone that's watching online can call in 1-833-782-7295. The code 245-860-641#, which gives Mr. Glinsky enough time to come on up.
I thank council for the opportunity to pose a couple of questions. With regard to item 11.1, which was the DCC ACC special project, the matter hasn't been put out to tender as near as I can ascertain, so a final figure for that project isn't known. I'm wondering if the city can be sure that $180,000 will cover that cost.
Howie.
Thank you for the question. We had done significant research with other similar sized municipalities about their process and their budget. And, certainly until we get out for that RFP, it will remain ultimately unknown, but we feel confident in the amount that's been allocated for the work that's required.
Thank you for the response. Thanks. My second question, Acting Mayor, relates to an item 11.4, which is the theater seating. And I'm wondering how the old system will be disposed of. There's a significant superstructure, about 400 chairs. I'm wondering if it's going to end up in landfill or if it can be repurposed.
I have that same wonderment as well, and our Director of Infrastructure is going to come from behind you.
Sorry, through the chair. I'll have to research that one, but I'm almost certain it'll be recycled. The metal is valuable, but I will double check and confirm.
Appreciate that. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Those are my questions, Acting Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glinsky. Anyone in the gallery with a question of clarification for today? Okay. Anyone online, Mr. Tate? No one online? No other movement from the gallery? Mr. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, seeing no one else coming forward, I just want to remind the public and that this Saturday you will be without electricity from 8
Sunday.
Let's get the day right, the 24th. Without power from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. So plan accordingly. I'm glad I'm out of town that day.
Good day for a barbecue.
Plenty of businesses in town with activities lined up for the power outage day. So with that, we are adjourned at 8:26. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.